Welcome once again to another episode of Bill Has Opinions. Where the opinions are made up and the beers don't matter. I am Laura Lavoie, and I am joined, of course, by Bill Perkins, who has opinions. Hashtag Opinion Gang. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Wait. There, hashtag Opinion Gang.
Every time. We're not allowed to point at things on the screen anymore because it never works.
I'm good to answer your question.
How are you doing on this fine first day of March?
It's a little chilly, but otherwise, I can't complain. It's I had a good weekend. It was mild. I was promised rain, and I got sunshine instead.
Yeah,
so that's nice.
I hear you on that. I was also grateful for that because we were actually up in Asheville this weekend doing some work on the house, and it was beautiful out.
Yeah,
so,
really nice.
It's very nice.
Yeah. So, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Let's see. It is March 1st, and this morning, heavy thunderstorms. So March came in like a lion. So we'll hope it goes out like a lamb, as it turns out.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, as they say.
As they say. So let's get to the meat of things because I know we have a big show today. So let's start out with the most important thing. What beers are you drinking?
Well, right now I'm working on what's left of this. This is it's actually from Boojum, which ties in.
I see what you did there.
See what I did there. It's a blonde by Boojum Brewery over in Waynesville, North Carolina. And it's pretty okay. I mean, could use a little more alcohol. It's only like 4 or something, I think.
You need something with a little higher octane is what you need. Do you have something on deck?
I'm gonna have another one of these if someone will bring me one, but that's up in the air whether or not that happens.
I mean, you've made the plea on live internet television, so if we were a band and we were playing a show and you said that out loud, someone would bring you a beer.
Oh, absolutely. Well, so no, I mean, I have a scheduled delivery of another beer, but it's kind of tentative on whether or not somebody has time and remembers, so this might be a dry show is what I'm saying.
Oh, wow. I don't know. Can we do that? Is that possible?
I mean, well, there you go. I'm finished with that one. So let's see what happens.
We'll find out. So I'm starting out with a Brewdog Hazy Jane. It is not in any way, shape, or form related to the theme of the show. Unless we count Dogmen, which we will talk about later when we reveal what the show's about.
Or ghost dogs, maybe.
Ghost dogs. So it's good. I've never had it before. It's hazy, as you would imagine. And then when I'm done with that, I'm trying another new one, the Voodoo Ranger Captain Dynamite. So I've never heard of it. I'm going to try it.
Okay.
Sounds delicious. But
if you like dynamite, it does.
If you do. I mean, I assume it's not literal.
You don't think it's actually packed with dynamite?
So. No, that's like a Warner Brothers cartoon where I open it up and it goes, and then I have the soot on my face.
Yeah,
my hair's blown back.
Right.
that would be what that is, and I'm pretty sure that doesn't actually happen in real life. I will be proven wrong if that's what happens. But.
Yeah, I hope it's just soot and your hair's blown back and it's not a racist caricature, which is what sometimes.
Yeah, no, that I would not do that. That's not a thing I would ever do.
You never buy that beer again.
Exactly. All right, but we are strangely excited for this show. It's a big topic for us. This has been a topic of conversation that we've had a few times. So, yes, there are a lot of attempted very tiny puns in that statement. We are talking cryptids today. So, you know them, you love them. They're the weird and wild monsters that are elusive to people. There's legends, there's urban legends, there's all of that, and we are going to try to cover all of it in an hour.
Let's be honest, we're going to cover about 48% of it.
That's probably true. But let's start out with, I know you've got a monologue because I know you've got some opinions. So why don't you kick us off?
All right. So, I was like a kind of a creepy kid, and I was into weird shit as a kid. And only library books, like library was like an elective when you were in elementary school. Like you go to PE and you go to art and you go to music, and then one day a week you'd also go to the library and you check books.
Yeah, I guess I do remember that.
Okay, so library was like an elective during those days. Anyway, the only books I ever checked out from the library were always books about like enigmas and cryptids and stuff like that. You know, like that's all I was really interested in, was reading about UFOs and monsters and ghosts and shit like that. So that's all I ever checked out, you know. So that's where my interest started on it. And then I guess when I was about, I don't know, 11 or 12, I think I saw the movie, the Legend of Boggy Creek, I think it's called.
Oh yeah, I vaguely remember that.
So that takes place in some swampy area of Arkansas, I want to say. And it was about a family that was basically terrorized by Sasquatch.
Kind of the polar opposite of Harry and the Hendersons.
Yeah, but it's kind of their fault for living in the rural, swampy part of Arkansas, if you ask me.
Fair enough. That's like we complain about bears in our city in Asheville. Well, you know what? You moved where the bears lived. That's what you get.
You move out to the stupid, stinky swamp in southern Arkansas, and you're gonna have to put up with Sasquatch.
You got to put it. He's a roommate now.
Anyway, that really piqued my interest. I mean, I was already interested, obviously, or I would have watched the movie probably. But you know, I don't know. Just I've always kind of been boggled about it, and I go through these waves, but it comes back. It always comes back like it's a thing I'm interested in. And here's so I'll say this, and I've actually got a shelf on my bookshelf that's just books about Sasquatch. I mean, well, I guess there's a couple books that are just about cryptids in general, like they're more generic, but mostly Sasquatch like oriented. And I guess when I got to be an adult, I decided to believe in all this crazy shit made you kind of a kook. But if you just picked one thing, it made you eccentric.
Fair enough.
So I decided to figure out what I really thought. I think Bigfoot, of all the cryptids and all the enigmas and weird conspiracy theories that exist out there, I feel like Bigfoot's the one that has the biggest chance of being true. Right. That's just the way I mean, and I don't know, and I guess I kind of want to believe in it, I'm not saying I do believe in it. I definitely am a Bigfoot agnostic, but I definitely like the idea that, it stands to reason. There's something we don't know about. There's plenty of shit we don't know. You look at the history of the world. I mean, there was a time in the early 1800s, I think, when the first white people came back to Europe and said something about gorillas. People were like, "Oh, you're out of your fucking mind. That's not a thing." And they were like, "Oh, no. There are these hairy men that live in the jungle." And they're like, "Oh, you're crazy. That's crazy talk. That's just some mumbo jumbo you heard." And they're like, and then finally, one day, they saw them or they caught one or whatever the hell. And then people were like, "Oh, I'll be damned. Okay, that's a thing." I mean, we've discovered over time, the Tasmanian tiger, which people thought was long extinct. I guess there were a handful of them still roaming around. They're probably good and extinct now, but for years people would see a random one here and there, and then finally, I think in the 30s or 40s, somebody actually caught a picture of one and was like, "Yeah, see, there is a thing." You got those kinds of things. The coelacanth being found, randomly. There's cases we've finally proved there is a fucking giant squid. It's not obviously it's not as colossal as the old drawings make it out to be, but it's a pretty goddamn big squid. So things exist that we don't know about for a long time before we do know about them, and so it stands to reason that there's could be something out there.
And so we do have a comment, but I want to wait to share it. So hopefully I remember to go back to it because it's about a specific segment that we're going to do a little later on in the show. Our favorite librarian from Minnesota sharing her information, which Heather, just so you know, that's also a very common myth in Michigan. So it came from the Midwest. So we'll talk about that a little bit later for sure. But so I think it's interesting because, as far as potential for believability, I agree with you. Because to be honest, like if I'm going to pick a thing that's real, I don't really concern myself about things like that. But if I were, I actually would go ghosts. Like I think ghosts are much more likely.
Okay.
But Sasquatch is, so if you're going to talk cryptids though, as likely, Sasquatch makes sense because there's enough like weird random evidence that maybe it could be. And I think also any of like the lake monsters like Nessie or Champ or, because those have a long history of weird evidence, like weird sightings.
Those are my second pick after Sasquatch. I'd say lake monsters are my second favorite of that sort of thing, But anyway, the thing about the Sasquatch, I guess that makes it somewhat believable to me is if it's a hoax, it's been a long game hoax, right? Like it's been more than one person. It's a conspiracy. And here's the thing with me, I stopped believing in conspiracies when I took a job in corporate. Because I realized when you get more than one person involved in a thing, either they fuck it up colossally or somebody's going to want credit for it.
Right.
So that's why I don't believe in conspiracies anymore, because just multiple people getting involved in something, they can't pull it off. To answer what Heather just said, I wish I could see a Bigfoot. Also, I want to see one, but I want to see one across a field. I don't want to turn a corner when I'm on a hiking trail and bump into his chest and look up and, oh shit. No, because I'd probably like wet myself and I wouldn't like that. But if I see one across a field and I go, oh shit, that's a Sasquatch, I'll be like validated.
So the musical artist Jonathan Colton has a song called "Under the Pines," which it's very subtle in its humor, because some of his songs they tend to be subtle, but some of them smack you over the head a little more. This song is very subtle because it is about if Leonard Nimoy was filming in search of and met Sasquatch and ended up having a romantic relationship with Sasquatch. Wow. And it's such a beautiful song because it's really sweet and it's all about this love story, but it's subtle. Like you don't necessarily realize.
It's so layered. It
is. I would play it, but we would get shut down on YouTube, sure. So I can't. But I recommend anybody to go check it out. Jonathan Colton, "Under the Pines." It's a wonderful love song about Leonard Nimoy and a Sasquatch.
I guess we should. A brief breakaway just for a second. I want to cover it for just a sec. But so Sasquatch erotica is apparently like a huge thing now.
Yes, I understand that to be true.
Yeah, Republican congressmen and stuff write this shit. I don't know what. Like, it's really weird. If you go to Amazon and type in Sasquatch, you'll see like this, the Sasquatch loved me and the one night with Bigfoot and all this kind of crazy shit. I mean, there's that we can have a whole other show about weird erotica themes also, because there's some crazy ones out there. But I'm surprised there's as much of the Bigfoot erotica as there is. I was actually looking for something else today because I was doing a lot of research on cryptids, and at some point today I bumped into a book that I thought was about Bigfoot, but then I looked at it for a second and I was like, oh, this is one of those dirty Bigfoot books.
You're like, oh, this looks good. Oh, wait. Hold on. No, never mind. Never mind. Yeah, no, Heather is correct. There's a whole like weird erotica genre, like dinosaurs. And yeah, no, it gets weird. It gets weird fast. And that's another show for sure. As is, I would like to point out conspiracy theories, because I think that could be its own show as well.
It could be, yes.
But we are not going to get into that this time around.
No.
So let us take a quick break to talk about some stuff. So this is who we're talking about this week. They are not paying us for their to put them online or anything. We just I guess it's a friend of yours, Bill?
Yeah, this is actually my friend Matt Belknap from art school. He and his brother have started this fabrication company, I guess, for lack of he got into sort of as a hobby. I think he got into AutoCAD and stuff like that, doing some lathe work and things like that. But this their main thing seems to be like mid-century style welded steel plant stands for the most part.
Nice.
He's got a couple other things, but that's the main product that he's selling right now. So he's got like 4 or 5 different designs on the website there. If you look at them, if you like mid-century stuff,
I do.
if you want a plant stand that's probably not going to break anytime soon, I would say it's probably a little high end, but not too high end that it's out of your budget if you're in your 40s.
Well, and it'll apparently last clear into the next mid-century.
There you go. Exactly. At least
beyond.
It'll be the last plant stand you ever buy.
Unless you want more, and then you can buy another one.
Yeah, but it should last you is what I'm getting at.
Well, awesome. So check out Belk Labs at belklabs.com. They do all kinds of cool stuff, so definitely check them out. So, but since we are talking about cryptids, we want to get back to the show.
Right.
And, wait, Bill, did you just change your shirt while we were on commercial?
Yeah, I might have. I own more than one T-shirt from a cryptid themed museum because I visited more than one. So I just, when was I going to wear them?
Well, you are wearing them live on the internet. That is when I do not have a cryptid T-shirt, but I've got a supernatural shirt, which I thought was close enough.
It's in the realm of sort of, yeah.
I mean, they definitely have explored various cryptids in various episodes of the show.
Right.
So that's why I went with that. All right. So I've got like a giant list of cryptids.
All right.
And I don't really know where to start. Do we want to start with the giant list? Do we want to start with our feature cryptids of a certain area of the country?
Well, however you want to attack it is fine by me. But,
Let's start with our feature segment, shall we? Mostly because I really enjoy doing this.
I know.
So it came from the Midwest. The Midwest has a long-standing history of cryptids, including this one that Heather brought up a little bit earlier in chat, the Dogman. So you can check it out at the Minnesota Dogman. But interestingly enough, there is also a Michigan Dogman. That is, so it's competing mythologies, right? So Michigan obviously was settled by French traders initially. And then, of course, there's a large Native American population, specifically the Chippewa, Ojibwa, that group of people. So somebody has asked me to repeat the graphic. I will, I promise. So it all kind of combines to be some sort of werewolf legend. So there's the Dogman, which I guess, especially the Michigan Native tribes referred to it as the Wendigo, which is also in Minnesota. And then the French referred to it as loup-garou, which basically are all werewolves. So some sort of lycanthrope.
I was looking up the Wendigo earlier today, and that's apparently because we had a little back and forth about it yesterday. Because you were saying it was in Michigan. I was like, I thought that was an East Coast thing. So it turns out any tribe in the Algonquin language family,
sure,
it was a shared mythology. So they pretty much all of the tribes that speak Algonquin or some dialect of Algonquin believe in the Wendigo. So it goes up the East Coast and then all over the Great Lakes area and then dips down a little bit into the southern Midwest, apparently. And it's all over Canada.
Yes. Yes. So we also have a movie recommendation. The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot. So apparently, first of all, it's Sam Elliott, so we should probably watch that.
He killed him with his mustache.
I mean, it sounds interesting.
Came out and wrapped around its neck.
I mean, it's magical. It's totally magical. So, so Michigan, of course, also has a lot of Bigfoot sightings, and really any place where there's a lot of like woods, you're going to get, and woods and outdoors experiences, you're going to get Bigfoot. So that's nationwide, I think.
You don't get a lot of Bigfoot sightings in the Southwest.
Well, I think because it's more swampy. Like you don't get that like dense forest that you do in like the upper Midwest. And
I was saying the Southwest, not the Southeast.
The Southwest, yeah, exactly.
Yes. No Bigfoots in the desert.
Yes, no Bigfoots in the desert.
They do have Bigfoots in the Southeast, and they call them this because they live in the swamps.
Correct. Yeah.
And there's not as many of them. They're not as dense, I would say.
Because according to legend, there's like a significant population of Bigfoot. Like there's like family units and stuff because of the rate people have been seeing them. They have to be literally everywhere.
Right. Yeah, there have to be groups of them, and of course the most dense would be like the Pacific Northwest. I would say that area,
very foresty.
From Northern California up to Vancouver area. That's where the lion's share of the sightings originally took place. You hear a lot about it. The mountainous area of Oklahoma, the woodsy parts of Ohio. You hear a lot about it.
Right. So yes, the question is: are there urban Bigfoot?
I would say no. You don't hear a lot about
I like how you answer that very seriously. You're like, no, Bigfoot doesn't go to a job.
No. Well, no, it's just every time you hear about it, even when you hear about them interacting with people, like sometimes you'll read these stories like, oh, they were on my porch or whatever. It's not somebody who lives in the suburbs. It's somebody who lives out in the boonies by themselves. These are people who live on the very edge of civilization who have encounters with Bigfoots.
Right.
For the most part.
Fair enough. So, and then the one other, it came from the Midwest cryptid, specifically Detroit, that I want to talk about. Cryptid, so this will be a theme if we get to it later in the show, but there's a lot of crossover between cryptids, actual creatures with sightings, and like urban legends.
Sure.
Just like the weird ethereal things that are just permeate a culture. So in Detroit, there's one called a Nain Rouge, which is like some sort of like devil creature thing. And I guess I didn't even know about this until well after I moved out of Michigan, but they have a festival for it every year and it sounds pretty cool. And I kind of wish I had known about it before that. But basically you have this festival so that you beat back the Nain Rouge for one more year so he doesn't come do mischief.
Right. And what I was reading about that, because I was reading about it right about the same time you told me, like, oh, we have this, but that one comes with he's sort of a portent of doom, like bad news for the city, kind of like he shows up, I guess probably before like the collapse of the American automobile industry when Detroit started kind of tanking, so he's a portent of bad tidings. And there's a handful of them that are like the one down in West Virginia, the Mothman, is the same sort of thing. Like people have said, I saw the Mothman, and then the bridge collapsed, and we had a flood, or whatever. So the Mothman, shows up, and we had one in South Carolina like that. It wasn't a cryptid. It was more like the Nain Rouge. He was more of a spirit. We had this thing called the Gray Man. In Pawleys Island, which is off the coast of, it's between Charleston and Myrtle Beach. It's like halfway up the coast.
I've been there. It's a cool place. Yeah,
it's a cool island. It's like a private island mostly, like not that touristy. But anyway, there is a thing called the Gray Man, which is basically it's kind of like a gray shadowy figure that appears on the beach, usually prior to when a hurricane is actually going to hit South Carolina. Like if we're going to get like a Cat 3 or above hit our state, people will see the Gray Man prior to that. While we're talking a little bit about like the spiritual versus the cryptid thing. I want to.
Let us do this real quick because we have been asked to play it again, and we are done with the segment. So we can move on.
Okay.
So yes, the more kind of like urban legend-y type. That I think there's a lot of crossover between that sort of like spirit, urban legend, and
what I was going to say is like so white people see the even the Sasquatch as a creature, but in to the Native Americans, he also is sort of a metaphysical. He's got a spiritual quality. They revere the Sasquatch, and think of them as maybe being like on a different plane. Like this is maybe just a physical manifestation of a spiritual creature, if you will. So, and I think that from everything I read about like the Wendigo and a bunch of these things, it's kind of like that. There's like sort of like this gray area, like, white people are going to perceive it this way. Like, what is this thing? It's a weird creature. I don't know what that is. Whereas the natives come at it as, this is like a, it's some sort of god or demon or spirit thing, so it gets kind of sort of a wash, depending on what your cultural background is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
And, and I can certainly see that, I was reading also, so I said I had my beer from Boojum up in Waynesville. There's a lot of interesting legends up that way. So, and what I was trying to figure out, and I didn't come to anything conclusive, but Boojum is just the hillbilly word for a Bigfoot, apparently.
Right.
Reading. Now, the same area, there is a Cherokee legend of this being called Sulkulu, and he was rumored to live up in the cave at Devil's Courthouse, which is right on the parkway there. Also, the white people called him Juddakula. I don't know how they got Sulkulu into Juddakula. Like it doesn't sound remotely like.
Well, white people be crazy.
White people be crazy. They're gonna mess up anything. So anyway, he also called Juddakula, and there's a handful of things in the area called Juddakula this and Juddakula that. Anyway, that whole he was described by the Cherokee as being a slant-eyed giant, and if you read the story, the legend of Sulkulu, it sounds an awful lot like a Sasquatch, basically. Now I said when the people say Boojum, they literally mean like a hairy ape man kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I think Sulkulu has like a little bit of, maybe it's open to interpretation how you want to say it, but most native tribes all over the United States have some version of it. If you look into the legends, there's a lot of overlap and crossover. They call it something different, but you can go, oh wow. And see, that's another thing that makes me think, okay, there's a little bit, because most legends is the thing. Legends, yeah, they're legendary, and some of it's bullshit, but there's usually like a little kernel of something. Like the things get started for a reason, right? Like
sure.
And that's also, like I say, like the longer people talk about a thing, you go, well, maybe there's something to this, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, and it's so interesting that Bigfoot or some type of Bigfoot creature, like it exists in multiple cultures. Like you've got the Yeti or Abominable Snowman, which are just polar Sasquatches. Like it's just but they exist in more cultures than just the American Southeast. Like
the Caucasus have a thing called the Alma. In the Southern Caucasus, then there's also there's the Yowie in Australia, mm-hmm. which is very similar also. Right. There's the Borneo wild man. There's like these kinds of stories all over the world, really.
Which is why the next coolest one to me is the lake monsters, because in lakes I didn't even realize this, that there's a lake monster in Lake Superior called Pressy, something like that. But there's obviously, the Loch Ness monster is the most famous, but Lake Champlain has Champ.
Right.
There's they're everywhere. So clearly somebody saw something.
Yeah, you got the Gloucester Monster off the coast of Gloucester, Massachusetts. You got Chessie in the Chesapeake Bay. Those aren't lake monsters. I guess those are sea monsters. But
yeah, but I think they get grouped in like they're not Kraken. They're like some sort of
either a serpent or a plesiosaur or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. They're a little different.
Yeah. I was like, this is funny. I actually wasted some time over the summer watching. There's a show that comes on I don't know, Discovery or one of those channels that used to be sciencey but isn't anymore.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's actually a really offensive name that I always pops in my brain, and I'm not going to say it because it's awful, and I wish it didn't. But yeah, they changed their programming at some point to just be about exploitative things.
Yeah.
And that's all I can think about now.
So anyway, there's this one program called the River Monsters, and it's basically this guy goes to a foreign country and he's heard some rumor about this like mythical giant beast that lives in whatever lake or river or something around here, and he spends the entirety of the thing like he does some like interviews with the locals, and then he eventually goes out and he goes fishing and he tries to catch the thing. So the long and short of it is, if you have a river monster, if there's some large thing people have seen, here's what it is. It's a really big catfish. It's funny because we also use the word catfish for like something that like baits someone and then turns out not to be what it is. So, and I think that kind of like lends credence, right? Like, because the catfish does that. Like, catfish grow really large. They can be like hundreds of pounds. They're huge. And apparently, all it takes is one to get 200 pounds in a lake, and then people think they've got a monster.
Nice. And Jay, I think you could be right. Pressy from Lake Superior, maybe Pressy did take out the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Huh. Yeah.
That's a science fiction story waiting to be written, is what that is.
That would totally, yes, that could show up on Sci-Fi.
Yes,
they would air that. If you made that movie, they would air it, right?
100% would air it. But I think it's so interesting, like Nessie in particular, and we talked about this before the show too, or this week, how Nessie has been so permeated in like global culture. Like everybody knows that this lake in Scotland has a monster. And I think that's mostly due to a certain 80s band called The Police.
You think that, I don't know if I'd give them the credit for the widespread belief in Nessie, but I do think it's very interesting. I do love the song. I heard it 2 days ago. I was driving to work and it came on and I was listening to it and I was like, it's my favorite song with the Loch Ness Monster.
Right, exactly. Apparently, I have been schooled. Pressy isn't technically Lake Superior, but hey, I still think that's a science fiction story waiting to be written. That's what I'm saying. So yes, no, I liked your. And first of all, I'd like to say we are going to do a future episode on 80s music. I don't remember when it's coming up, but so we'll probably talk about the Police a lot more in the future. But I believe that Synchronicity 2 is objectively the Police's best song. Like objectively, just the best song.
I don't know if it's my go-to for rocking out, but I definitely lyrically, I think it's the most like, boy, it sticks with you. Also because not just the parts about the Loch Ness Monster, but it also has the line, a humiliating kick in the crotch.
Yes. No, the writing and it's very. I always forget how much I like Sting or the Police until Sting used to be my very favorite artist before Tori Amos was a thing. Oh. Sting was my top artist. Like my brother was obsessed with the Beatles. I was obsessed with the Police and Sting, and for a while. And then Tori Amos came and wiped that off the map. And then now I forget how much I like them until I hear them again. And wait, Sting, I like him. That's really good. Yes, I was listening to it recently too.
Yeah. Yeah, it came on a couple days ago though, and I was like, we got to talk about this.
I mean, I think it's important when there are songs. So speaking of songs about cryptids, Tenacious D has a song about Sasquatch, much like the Jonathan Colton song. Not as it's still a comedy, not as subtle as the Jonathan Colton song,
I can
but
see that.
certainly a
Tenacious
rocky.
D, not known for their subtlety.
No, Tenacious D is like, that's a synonym for not subtle.
I don't know any. Aside from, I do know this one band that had a song about a kraken.
I happen to know that band too.
Other than that, I don't actually know loads of songs about cryptids.
I guarantee there are more that we don't know about, like Jersey Devil. Like, I guarantee there are songs. So
absolutely.
Feel free to talk about them in the comments.
Yeah, feel free to mention them if you know. Yeah, I'm sure there's loads. I sort of wrote a song when I was in college. I wrote a song about chupacabras too, but I never did anything with it.
Nice.
I mean, it was kind of a goof, like just like something I used to like, play at the house just to amuse myself or something. But it was when chupacabras took off, like when they became a big deal in the late '90s.
Right. I think chupacabra is a really interesting one because. So first of all, the other day I saw a meme it was a picture of a capybara, and it said, "I don't know why people are so afraid of chupacabras. They're adorable." No, it's a capybara. It's but like, I remember, I'm sure you remember this too. Like the one time, I think it was the late '90s, early 2000s, when a chupacabra washed up on some shore. And it was like a bloated corpse of like a cow. But everyone was like, look, it's proof of chupacabra.
There were a lot of those, actually. There were loads of pictures on the internet of different random things. There was also footage of like a mangy coyote or something. And like running in the woods, and somebody said, that's a chupacabra. It was like any weird thing that people saw in the 90s was a chupacabra. Like, if I couldn't explain it, if you couldn't immediately look at it and know what it was a chupacabra. And it was like, and I was always like, yeah, but like, this doesn't match like the original stories I read. Like, where are its wings? Where are its glowing red eyes? It's supposed to have fins down its back, damn it. Like, that's not it.
No, I did. Yeah, that particular, like, it was a moment in time where the world was obsessed with chupacabras, and we're just like, anything was a chupacabra. Like anything unexplainable was a chupacabra.
Yeah. So here's an interesting story. I'm going to segue between the chupacabras and the Sasquatch a little bit. So when I was a child, I want to say I was about 11 or 12-ish. I forgot to talk about this in the monologue. So about 2 towns over from where I grew up, there was this guy. He was driving home one night, and his car got attacked by something that was green with glowing red eyes, right?
Ooh. Now,
but he said it was about 7 feet tall, which is bigger than a chupacabra, about the right size for a Sasquatch, maybe. People have, but anyway, he said it was green, and everybody called it Lizard Man, and it lived in this swamp in South Carolina, and that for that whole summer, that thing just, it was a media frenzy down there. Like we had nothing else going on, so everybody just wanted to talk about the Lizard Man. And this guy did multiple interviews about the Lizard Man, and then somebody else claimed to have seen the Lizard Man then, and then I think somebody found some footprints in the swamp or something. That might have been a hoax, might not have been. Who knows? People started selling T-shirts. Like all the local stores in the area started selling these T-shirts. They had the Lizard Man on them.
Of course.
It became an economic boon for this small town, Bishopville, South Carolina. Okay. And anyway, so then it kind of like, we talked about it for a while, like for that year, and then it kind of died down. And we talk about it a whole lot. But I remember actually my buddy Craig from college, like this was one of the things me and him bonded over, was we realized, like when we first met each other, we realized we both had a dossier where we kept all the newspaper clippings about the Lizard Man because we were that into it. And so
awesome.
we bonded over it and realized we were both into the same kind of shit. Like we were all about, cryptids and different weird shit like that. So that became a bonding thing for us. But years go by, and then I started thinking more about the Lizard Man. Like, I think it was when the chupacabra thing happened. I started thinking about it. I was like, this Lizard Man really sounds a lot more like a chupacabra than a Sasquatch, right? Like he's like some of the way he was described, and
I I love having great friends who are librarians because real-time research, folks. You don't get this in any show.
No, yeah. She anyway, yeah, Heather, go down that wormhole. Read all about the lizard man. What do you think? This thing, like I said, it just captivated all of South Carolina for at least that summer. And then it keeps popping back up every 10 or so years. A couple years ago, Bishopville tried to have a Lizard Man festival. And actually, last time I drove through Bishopville, a couple summers ago, I was visiting my mom, and we were just looking for shit to do. So we would just drive around to all the local towns and see what there was to hit up, And there was a in front of some restaurant down there. They had a big, huge an art piece about the Lizard Man because they're still trying to capitalize on it.
Of course they are. Roswell, New Mexico, right? There's still all the UFO stuff.
Yeah, everything in Roswell is called alien this and UFO that. And, you can't escape it. And so, yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like the one thing Bishopville, South Carolina's got going for it is this guy saw this thing one time,
So I don't remember all of the specifics about this episode, but the X-Files obviously at various times did episodes about various cryptids because it's the X-Files. But when they did the reboot or the sequel episodes, whatever they were a couple of years ago, there was in one of the seasons, and I don't recommend going back and watching those. They're actually pretty bad. But just
watch them for that reason.
It's not worth it. But I suggest 2 episodes because they did 2 seasons. I suggest 2 episodes. Because there was a guy that wrote a lot of the comedy meta episodes of the original version. We've talked about this before.
Yes, yeah.
And in the reboot, he did the same thing. And he wrote 2 episodes, one for each season. And they are hands down the best of those seasons.
Okay.
And one of them, and I don't remember whether it was the first or the second, but is about a lizard man. And it's pretty freaking funny. I don't remember if it takes place in South Carolina. It could. Or it could just be random.
Okay. I will have to go watch it now because
you should. It's hilarious, and I know you like that writer because you like a lot of his other episodes.
Yes.
So you don't need to watch anything else. You don't need to watch any of the other episodes. Watch that one because
I need to watch it just because, like you said, I loved everything he ever wrote. I loved God. What was the Clive Bruckman's Last Repose, and what was the other big one that I loved? Oh, the Carl Jung's From Outer Space.
Yes.
Jose From Outer Space.
Yes.
That was with Charles Nelson Riley. That was the best episode ever written.
Yes.
If you guys don't like X-Files, just watch that one episode.
Exactly. So apparently I'm curious about this. I'm going to go watch this YouTube video after the show. The Crichton leprechaun. I am actually very
is this the one in Alabama? Is this Jay?
Jay, answer us if that is the case.
The Alabama leprechaun. It was a big internet sensation for a while. Everybody who's seen the leprechaun say, "Yeah." You remember this?
I do not, and that may be exactly what it is. So I do have to tell this story real quick. So a few years ago, we've got a really good friend in Asheville. You've met him, Ben. He works at the Nature Center. Ben is also very much. You and Ben have that in common. He's very much a fan of cryptids. He's been to multiple cryptid museums across the United States. He freaking loves them. So a few years ago, he suggested to our mutual friend group that we go to this presentation at the REI down in Biltmore Park, which is a fake city, right? So it was this presentation about hunting Bigfoot.
Right.
And so we're like, okay, this is great. We get there, and there's actually 2 guys that have been in all the documentary shows. They're there in the audience. They're not presenting. It's an REI employee that's presenting. But these 2 guys who are relatively local were there too, listening to this presentation. It was put on by an REI employee. And as it turns out, it had nothing to do with how to hunt a Bigfoot. It had everything to do with the gear that you could buy from REI if you went out in the woods overnight to hunt Bigfoot.
It was just a sales pitch, is all it was.
It was 100% a sales pitch.
I remember this because I was going to go to this thing, and then something came up, and I didn't go, and I was a little bit bummed until you told me all this, and I was like, "Cool." I was spared.
I learned about a new type of bug spray, though, and that was helpful.
Okay.
Like it was a different formula of bug spray that was like better than like the crappy,
DEET.
Well, it was better than DEET. It was less destructive than DEET, which is what, like, I bathe myself in pure DEET when I am out when there are bugs because no, thank you. But
Okay.
but then you like there's like the hippie version, like the lemongrass stuff. That I'm like that doesn't. They just like the bugs are like, oh, that's delicious. Let me.
They're like, oh, you've added a flavor.
Yeah, why? Thank you. It's delightful. So, no, I learned about this third version. I can't remember what it was now, but that was the most interesting thing I learned about it. Oh, yeah. I did look at backpacks while I was there after the show.
The kind of backpacks one might use to hunt Bigfoot.
One might. My backpack, the one I ended up getting, was more for backpacking across Europe with a laptop. So
I see. So yeah, I think the thing about it is, I think if you go out in the woods looking for Bigfoot, the odds are pretty slim you're going to run into him.
Correct. Correct. Yeah, Bigfoot is a thing that just happens. It's not.
Yeah, if it's meant to be, it'll happen. You going out to search for Bigfoot is probably the biggest waste of your time.
Yes.
I mean, the only thing I can say to that is, if you're the kind of person who spends a lot of time outdoors, your chances of seeing Bigfoot are increased, and you want to be the kind of person who's maybe aware of your surroundings, right? Because like, this is funny to me because like I go on a lot of hikes, and sometimes it's funny to me, like if I go with my kids and stuff, how unaware they are, like, because they're just like, and then like you have like sometimes I'll be like, hey, look at that snake over there, and they're like, oh wow, and then I'm like, oh hey, look at that bird, and then well, how do you see all those things? And I'm like, because I'm looking for them.
I'm watching. As it turns out, so you're looking for Bigfoot too when you're out. Like, if I'm already out, I might as well look for Bigfoot.
I might as well. I don't expect to see him, but if I ever do, it'll be because I have my eyes open.
So we don't need to stick on this subject for very long, but this was an interesting conversation we had the other day as we were preparing for the show, because I asked the question. Because Cryptid, right? Like we were talking about these spiritual versions, like the Nain Rouge and the hurricane and all that sort of stuff, like the woman in white. There's definitely a lot of crossover with urban legend or, spiritual legend and cryptids. But so my question to you was, is a unicorn a cryptid?
And I replied, I think it's either like a proto-cryptid or it's like I don't know, it's like a gray area because, so here's the thing, because some of the cryptids, like the Kraken, are like, they date back to classical times. Like, we've been talking about that for fucking ever, right? And we still sort of kind of believe, I mean, well, we have giant squids now. They aren't exactly the Kraken, but, but kind of, sort of, Right. So anyway.
It may have led to the legend.
Right.
Like dolphins being mermaids, things like that.
Yeah. Like there's a kernel of truth, like I was saying earlier, sometimes to a legend. There's a thing that makes somebody see something and maybe they just don't understand it. They can't grasp it in their head. So it's this. And so I think, here's the thing. And I was saying this to Laura. So the unicorn, it's referenced in the Bible, So you've got like this long-standing reference to it. It's on the heraldry of Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been there forever,
right?
And then I think recently, in the last couple of years, I read a story about how in Eurasia there was once a being. It was like a rhinoceros, like a woolly rhinoceros, but it had a very long front horn, and maybe someone found the bones to that at some point in the past, and that led to their, oh hey, maybe this is a thing, this horse with a horn,
right?
So, there's a little bit of
a proto cryptid, and I because unicorns are one of my favorite things. I don't think I believe them literally, but I just love the legend, and like they existed throughout multiple cultures. There were unicorn type creatures in China and Japan, throughout the Middle East. and obviously Europe. Like, so it's interesting to me that those things kind of, they permeated all cultures, you know?
Right. And when I say proto-cryptid, what I'm saying is, I guess because we, as we understand it now, cryptids are basically unknown animals that exist in modern times. Like after we've come up with scientific classification systems, we have these things that exist outside the classification because we don't have enough evidence yet to because here's the thing with science. In order for us to prove there's an animal, we have to have a body. So there has to be a dead one that washes up somewhere, or we have to capture a live one. That's when science starts believing in a thing. You either have a capture or a body, right?
Or I guess you could have like the people that just like the scientists that go through jungles and find butterflies. Like,
but they find it. They actually found the actual butterfly. Like they probably they catch and release at least. What I'm saying is they have to prove it exists, and so that's the way scientific method works. And so they're not going to believe. I mean, like I said, with the coelacanth thing, that was extinct until it wasn't. Like somebody was I think a scientist was actually walking through a fish market somewhere in, I can't remember, it was India or South America or South Africa or somewhere around there. Somebody was going through a fish market and they saw one on a table and they said, "What the fuck?" Like, and
this is weird.
Yeah, because they recognized it from the fossil record. And he went to the fisherman and he said, "Where did you get this?" And the guy said, "I'll show you for some money." Right. And they took him to where he caught it, and they fished for them, and they caught some more of them. And he was like, "Oh, I'll be damned, these things exist." So that's the way science works, right? So until somebody either shoots a Sasquatch or one just dies in the vicinity of human beings, you know,
or we randomly catch one, or there's a Harry and the Hendersons moment.
Sure, something like that. Until that happens, like science isn't going to believe in them. That being said, I will say, you know, on my bookshelf of my Bigfoot books, I have one of my most prized Bigfoot books. There's actually one that's actually written by a legit scientist. His name is Grover Krantz. I think he died since then. It was written back in the 90s. But he was a professor in somewhere in British Columbia, I want to say. He was a professor of anthropology, but he wrote a book called Bigfoot Prints, and he's basically he's making the case for why it's believable that there is a Bigfoot. And he closes with the argument, you know, of course, as a scientist, here's how it's going to happen. Like, we're not going to believe in it until we're presented with a body, basically, you know, like,
right.
That's just how science works. And he realizes this is going to clash with some other, you know, a lot of people who like Bigfoots. Native Americans, for instance, would prefer that you don't go kill a Bigfoot to prove that they exist.
Right, because they have a spiritual component, which was, you know, to the point of the unicorns, unicorns were sacred animals, you know, they represented virginity, and they did all, so you wouldn't want to go kill a unicorn. Right. And so I like unicorns, and I mean, it's a different show, but I'm a unicorn purist. I have very specific definitions of unicorns. So, but that's another show. That's
you remember back when we were kids and Barnum and Bailey had a goat.
The goat, yes.
Merged a horn somehow, like you grafted its horns together.
Yeah, it's actually because I've seen that. I used to have the big book of unicorns. That goat was in it. And somebody did it with a cow, too. So they just took their two horn buds, and they took them out, and they transplanted them into the center of their head, and then they kind of grew together. Not quite in a perfect spiral, but they sort of went boop. Yeah. So, yeah, and the unicorn, or the goat, the Barnum and Bailey goat. So Matt has a funny story about that, if he chimes in. He went to the circus when that was going on, and he walked past the goat, and was like, "Hey, man, nice goat." And the guy was like, "It's a unicorn." No, it's not. It's a fucking goat. And he was like 9. Like, I know better.
All right.
Idiot.
That's a goat. Like unicorns are horses, man. You know, like.
All right. So as it turns out, and we predicted this, we've not gotten through everything because I think we have museums and festivals on our list. So I think we can make that a future show, like talking about museums and festivals. Totally. So let's save that for the future and let us close up the show, because I have for us I have an actual mailbag question, and it's a relevant mailbag question.
Okay.
So allow me to read it to you.
All right.
Is the plural of Bigfoot big feet or Bigfoots? And secondary question, is there a collective word for a group of Bigfoots?
I would say many are big. I mean, a handful of them are Bigfoots. I know that goes against English, but that's not how English works anyway. So,
they're not big feet. You would never say that over there is a family of big feet.
I wouldn't say that.
All right.
I would not. And I would say Bigfoot, just singular as a grouping. Like this other shirt I had on, this museum. It was called what was it? The Expedition Bigfoot. I think they're not talking about us like a Bigfoot. They're talking about all Bigfoot. Now, I guess we interchange the words. I typically say Sasquatch because it just, I don't know, sounds more educated to me, even though it's just the Indian word for it, but
sure.
I don't know. Like I'd rather say Sasquatch because Bigfoot was just that was like a marketing term coined in the 60s when they saw the ones in Northern California,
right.
And they started calling them Bigfoot, and then that kind of stuck as a thing. But I think I like Sasquatch better. Or
so what I was hoping for is a collective term. So like you have a murder of crows and a herd of goats and a clouder of cats.
Gosh.
Like if you were to decide, if you were in charge, Bill, if you decided what the name of a collective group of Bigfoots was, what would you call a collective group of Bigfoot?
A rumor.
A rumor of Bigfoot. Good one. Well done. Like swallows, but it has more meaning.
Something like that. I don't know. A sighting of Bigfoot. I don't know.
A sighting is good. I like a tangle of Sasquatch. That's an excellent term. But apparently that was actually on Google, but it's probably planted there.
Yes.
I like it, and we should go with it because that's how conspiracy.
It's on the internet. You can't argue with the internet, right?
You cannot. The internet is always correct. Always correct. The opinions of Bill Has Opinions are not the opinions of the internet. All right. So, Bill, I know we have things that are extra this week. You told me so. Please tell us, what is extra?
I want to talk about beignets tonight, and here's why. On more than one occasion, I have been to a place where beignets are on the menu, and I asked for said beignets, and then I am told we're out of beignets. We have no beignets. And so my beef tonight is, if you don't have beignets, then don't put them on the menu. Because if you have beignets on the menu, people are going to want beignets. And it's just unfair to make me think that I'm going to get something that I'm not going to get. Like, don't taunt me.
And yeah, that's not an I ran out of beignets 2 seconds ago moment. Like, that's like we just didn't make them today.
I have been. It's happened to me in more than one restaurant over the last few years. Every time I don't go into restaurants all the time that have beignets on the menu. Okay, so that it's an everyday occurrence. But when I do go to a place that has beignets on the menu, I see beignets on the menu, and I think, oh shit, I'm going to have some beignets now. And more times than not, when I order said beignets, I'm met with a sad face from the wait staff, and they inform me that there are no beignets to be had.
Isn't that a song? There are no beignets today. Like,
yeah,
isn't that a song?
Yeah, that's
I have no beignets today.
Yeah, I think they sing that in New Orleans.
They do, although usually it's bananas, but I can't quite.
They're mispronouncing it.
Yeah, the joke isn't as funny when I can't sing the song. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
The joke falls flat. We have fallen flat with that joke. I love beignets. I have only ever had them a handful of times, mostly in New Orleans.
They don't have them.
Right, because no one has them. There is a place in Atlanta that I've actually never been that it is like it's in the name of the company. So one, like it's something beignets. So one would hope they would always have beignets.
Oh my God. I don't know. I've been to Kentucky Fried Chicken when they didn't have chicken before. So
that is another show. I don't know what that show is, but it's another one. That's its own, like, yeah, that sounds like a story.
That's time to close. That's time to turn the lights off when that happens.
It really is. You're like, we're just staying open, but you can have potato wedges. Like, that's what you get. Here you go. Some coleslaw and potato wedges. We got you. We're Kentucky Fried Potato Wedges. That's just wrong on a lot of levels. All right, so we probably should. We'll save the rest of cryptids. We'll do it.
We have more cryptids to talk about.
Specifically museums and festivals, which I think are their own thing.
Yeah, wow.
For sure. So we'll save that for the future. So, Bill, will you take us away?
I will. Bill Has Opinions is engineered and produced by Laura Lavoie. The opinions of Bill are those of his and his alone, unless Laura shook her head in agreement with him, and then they probably shared that opinion. Likewise, for the opinions of Laura and whether or not Bill agrees with them. The opinions expressed by either of the two hosts are not necessarily those of any of the non-paid sponsors of our show, so don't hold them accountable, but do patronize them. Also, be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Facebook, and tune in next week for another exciting adventure on Bill Has Opinions. Don't forget, if you talk about us, to hashtag Opinion Gang, because that's a thing we're trying to make happen. So
do it.
Yeah, so do it, and we'll see you next week. Oh, and send us some letters or something.
Yes, do that. We'll see you next week. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you next Monday. Goodbye, everybody.